Guys, it is the May of 2023 and the AM5 platform along with DDR5 have been out for a couple of months. Yet, I've bought myself the Ryzen 9 5900X, a CPU that was announced more than 2 years ago, and this is gonna be an upgrade to my existing Ryzen 9 3900X. So is this upgrade gonna be worth it? Will we see any improvements considering we've got DDR4? Is the 5900X really the ultimate all-rounder bang for buck CPU for the now obsolete AM4 platform? Well, let's find out. So this is my workstation PC and I use this to edit in 4K at 60 FPS, and I built this myself sometime in 2019. If you want to watch the build video, it's up on the channel. And at the moment, we've got a Ryzen 9 3900X 12-core 24-thread CPU, and this is paired with an RTX 3070, which I've got a review of on the channel, so again, I'll put the link in the video's description. The RAM is 64GB of G-Skill Trident C DDR4 3600MHz. And yeah, these kind of specifications makes this PC great for editing and rendering in 4K 60 FPS. I do occasionally game on this, I play Dota 2, but not that often. So it is not a gaming PC, but I will come back to gaming in a bit because gaming is one of the weak points of the 3900X. And lastly, we've got the MSI Meg X570S, which is obviously an X570 board. So this will accept the new 5900X without a problem because it is running the latest BIOS. So let's unbox and install it in our PC. Now you might be thinking that it is pretty dumb to upgrade to a similar CPU. I mean, both of these have 12 cores and 24 threads and also have a similar boost speed. Well, I kind of agree, but there is more to this upgrade than just raw numbers. You see, AMD's Zen 3 brings substantial improvements over Zen 2, and the 5900X should be around 8 to 20% faster than the 3900X, depending on the apps that you are using. So there is the CPU. Now, one thing I'm disappointed to see is that there is no stock cooler included in the box. Meanwhile, the old 3900X did come with a stock cooler, and this is AMD's Wraith Prism. It's actually a fairly decent cooler. It's got a nice copper backplate, and yeah, it's got all the bells and whistles. It's got really awesome addressable RGB LED lighting. So a little disappointed that this was removed, but if you're buying such an expensive high performance CPU, you're most likely gonna use your own thermal solution. Anywho, let's go ahead and install the CPU. Now I admit that I'm quite dumb, and at this point I realized that I should have removed the radiator because then it would have been much easier to remove the CPU. But since I was in a hurry, I totally forgot this and made my work even more difficult. I also decided to wipe off the thermal compound before removing the old CPU because it is much easier to wipe off while the CPU is in its socket. And yeah, also ended up cleaning the CPU cooler. And yes, I could have gone with the 16-core 5950X, but that was substantially more expensive than the 5900X, and I don't want to sink in over $600 on the AM4 platform. I mean, diminishing returns, right? I'd rather save the extra money that I would have spent on the 5950X and buy a new graphics card couple of months down the road. And lastly, make sure to buy your own thermal compound because you don't get one with the CPU. And if you are wondering, I am using Cooler Master's CryoFuse. And that is it. So let's power on the computer and check the BIOS. And keep in mind that the first time you power on after swapping out the CPU, it's gonna take a while. For my system, it took about 2 minutes, but eventually it did start up and identified the CPU without any problems because we are running the latest BIOS. Now let's do a quick comparison with the 3900X. One thing I'm really looking forward to is speeding up the video rendering process. So to test, I rendered a 32-minute 4K 60 FPS video in DaVinci Resolve. And with the 3900X with PBO and XMP on, it took about 1 hour and 1 minute. And this was at the 80,000 bitrate, which is fairly high. Meanwhile, the 5900X does the exact same job in about 50 minutes. So that's a reduction of 11 minutes in the rendering time. And you know what, it's not just the reduction in the rendering time. The PC also feels way more responsive while editing videos. It is very difficult for me to express this through the video, but when you are editing videos in DaVinci Resolve, especially 4K 60 videos, the software just feels more smooth and responsive compared to what it was on the 3900X. One of the issues that I've faced with the 3900X while editing in 4K 60 is that the videos stutter a lot. The PC really struggles to play these videos back. 4K 30fps was not an issue, but 4K 60 is a bit too much for the 3900X. Now, after the upgrade, the video playback in Resolve is a lot smoother than it was before. It is still not perfect, but it is a lot better and manageable now. And this responsiveness is ultimately gonna save me a lot of hassle and time while editing the videos. And if you are making money off your videos, well then time is money. So the faster the better. Now, one of the issues that I've faced with the 3900X is with gaming. Even in games like Dota 2, whenever there's a lot of action, the game kind of falls below the 120 FPS mark. You can clearly see it happen here in Dota 2. Look at that, our GPU still has about 30% power remaining, and when I was playing this, I could feel a lot of stuttering and the PC was struggling to keep up. Now, after the upgrade to the 5900X, you can see that the same scene being rendered in Dota 2 gives us a much higher frame rate. You can see that the frame rate mostly stays above the 100 FPS mark. Of course, you're watching a replay because I wasn't recording while I was playing, but you get the idea. Here is another clip. You can see that the frame rate dips down to 85 momentarily when there's a lot of action going on. But after the upgrade to 5900X, the lowest that we see is 115 at that same point. So I would say that this is a major improvement. I also tested CSGO and it is running at 4K medium settings, and the frame rate does vary quite a bit, but at this point we are getting about 250 FPS. And after the upgrade at that similar point, we're getting over 380 FPS. And I know this is not the perfect way of measuring the performance between the two, but for now this will have to do. I've also noticed that my 3900X doesn't really seem to boost over 4.15 GHz, and this is with Precision Boost Overdrive switched on in Ryzen Master. Meanwhile, the 5900X boosts all the way up to 4.8 GHz. That is awesome. And obviously we are getting more FPS, 160-ish on the 5900X versus 125 something in this exact same scene on the 3900X. So a fair bit of improvement here. Cinebench R23 gives us a single core score of 1271 points and 17,656 for multi-core on the 3900X. The 5900X shows us solid improvements and gives us a multi-core score of 20,832 and 1,543 for single core. So with this, you can clearly see that even though both of the CPUs have the same threads and core count, yet the 5900X is superior in everything. This really shows the generational improvements of the Zen 3 architecture over Zen 2. So yeah, this has been a pretty successful upgrade and I'm quite happy for now. Although in ideal circumstances, I should have bought the Ryzen 9 7900X over the 5900X along with DDR5 and a new motherboard. But due to extremely high cost of PC components in 2023, I want to cut down on my expenditure by keeping my existing motherboard and the RAM. I mean, a brand new X670 board along with 64 gigs of DDR5 will be pretty expensive, and all of this comes out of my pocket since we are not sponsored by anyone. So keeping the cost down to a minimal while upgrading is a good idea. And this is why I'm also gonna sell my 3900X to recover some of the money that I've spent on the new 5900X. So yeah, I think the 5900X on an X570 board along with a decent graphics card is the ultimate and the best that you can get for your money on the AM4 platform. Hence the title of the video. And I think this CPU will be good enough for at least 4 years from now, or until I upgrade to editing in 8K. So with that, we're gonna wrap this video up, and yeah, thank you for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments down below, and I'll be more than happy to answer them. Alright, so let's keep this video short, and this is Tech Guy Charlie signing off.